Welcome to the Quantum AI Coach podcast. I'm Gina, founder of Virtual World Coaching Academy.
So what if the real reason your revenue is totally stalling right now has absolutely nothing to do with the market?
Right.
And literally everything to do with how long it took you to answer a difficult email this morning?
I mean, that is the exact uncomfortable question we're unpacking today. And honestly, it completely reframes how we look at professional bottlenecks.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking directly at you, the listener, and really setting the stakes for 2026.
Yeah, big stakes.
Because usually, when we talk about a business plateau, there's this underlying expectation that we're going to find a clean structural cause.
Oh, absolutely. Like you look at your company like an engine.
Exactly. You check the spark plugs, you check the fuel lines, the revenue drops, so you immediately point to rising interest rates or a change in the algorithm.
The classic algorithm blame.
Right. And you say, there it is. That's why we're stuck.
And we do that because we gravitate toward problems we can just point a finger at.
Yeah.
Because an external problem, well, it absolves us of internal responsibility.
Oh, 100%.
If it's the market's fault, we're just victims of circumstance,
But the source material we are diving into today takes that mechanical approach, completely tears it up, and just flips the script on what it takes to actually thrive in the current landscape.
Yeah, it's wild. According to this text, your ultimate competitive advantage isn't a new marketing funnel.
Right.
And it definitely isn't waiting out a market correction. It's this concept called decision-making velocity.
Decision-making velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why working harder and grinding longer just isn't working anymore for you.
It's really not.
And how shifting from a state of chronic hesitation to what the source calls sovereign command can completely unblock your capacity for wealth and leadership and scale.
I mean, the core premise here is profound. The author argues that when your growth hits a wall, hyper-analyzing external problems usually just confirms your worst suspicions.
Yeah, it creates massive internal conflict.
Exactly. The real silent killer of your wealth capacity is not the economy. It is your slow yes and your even slower no.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this because I feel like that hits incredibly close to home for a lot of people.
Oh, definitely.
The author drops this striking quote early on in the text. They write, "You think you're being careful, but you're actually operating at the speed of your doubts, not your genius."
That is the crux of the entire argument right there.
It's so good.
We constantly disguise our fear as diligence. We call it analysis paralysis. But the source views this through a really fascinating behavioral lens.
Right, like in the high-level ecosystem of business, wealth and opportunity are attracted to absolute clarity.
Yes. So when you hesitate, when you sit on a critical decision for weeks, waiting for some, mythical perfect data set.
Which doesn't exist, by the way.
Right, exactly. You are actively broadcasting a frequency of not ready.
Okay, I'm going to pause right there.
Right.
Because when we start using words like frequency or sovereign command,
People get skeptical.
yeah, a certain type of business leader, especially someone sitting in a corporate boardroom, is going to cross their arms and tune out. It can sound a bit abstract or, maybe even a little woo-woo.
No, that is a very fair critique. And it's vital we ground this. When the text talks about your frequency, it isn't talking about magic or crystals.
Right.
It is referring to observable micro behaviors. It's your vocal cadence when you pitch. It's the micro hesitations in your body language.
Oh, interesting.
It's the literal speed at which you respond to a pivot in a negotiation. Human beings, and especially elite business partners, are highly attuned to these subconscious cues.
They can smell the hesitation.
Exactly. If you are terrified of making the wrong choice, that underlying doubt bleeds into every single interaction. That is what the source means by broadcasting a frequency of not ready.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's like keeping 100 tabs open on your mental browser and wondering why your system keeps crashing.
Yes, such a good analogy.
Like you think you're just gathering data or being a highly responsible, careful leader, but you're really just draining your own battery.
Completely draining it. Every single maybe you leave hanging is using up massive amounts of background processing power.
And what that background processing power is actually doing is creating a literal leak in your sovereign power.
Yeah.
Your ability to command a room and execute a vision.
Yeah, and we fall into this trap because our evolutionary biology basically equates hesitation with safety.
Right, the survival mechanism.
Exactly. Our brains are wired to believe that if we just wait a little longer, the predator might leave or the path might become clearer.
But the elite players, the ones absolutely dominating their industries in 2026, they operate on a fundamentally different metric.
They really do. They know that the market does not pay for the length of your slide deck.
Or the sheer volume of your labor.
Right. The market pays for your speed of thought.
So how does this internal maybe actually sabotage us in practice? Because to illustrate this, the source shifts from the theoretical and shares a highly specific, almost cinematic personal story.
Oh, the London train dream.
Yes, it's so good.
It's a brilliant narrative device because it forces us to look at how we interpret real-world obstacles when our internal velocity is compromised.
It's an incredible sequence of events. So the author has this major photo shoot planned in London, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be a pivotal moment of high visibility for them. Nightlights, power poses, physically stepping into a much higher level of brand authority. The stakes feel huge to them.
Huge stakes.
The night before the shoot, the author has a very intense dream. In the dream, every single train to London is completely canceled.
Right, which is your classic anxiety manifestation.
Exactly.
The subconscious mind is literally visualizing the internal block.
Yes. But it doesn't stop there. The author wakes up, shakes off the dream, opens their phone to check their actual real-world transit app.
And it's down.
The screen is completely black. The system is totally down. There are no routes, no schedules, no options.
It's a literal physical roadblock perfectly mirroring the anxiety dream they just woke up from.
Which is just wild.
It really is. And it brings us to a fascinating crossroads. The source points out that an older, less evolved version of the author would have seized on this logistical nightmare as the ultimate alibi.
Oh, for sure. They would have used it as a convenient excuse to stay in the safety of no.
Right. They would have told themselves, well, the universe is clearly telling me it's not the right time.
Or the transit system is down, it's completely out of my hands.
It's the perfect blameless exit strategy.
Precisely. But instead of retreating, the author had a realization.
Yeah.
That dark screen on the transit app wasn't an external directive telling them to stop. It was merely a mirror reflecting their own lingering internal hesitation about being seen.
And that's the sovereign shift. They
Yeah.
realized they had a fundamental choice to make about their identity.
Right. Like, am I a person whose vision is dictated by a broken app on a screen? Or am I someone who moves at the speed of my own vision?
And they chose the vision. They found an alternate route, they got to London, and they did the shoot.
But here is where we need to push back a little bit.
Mm.
Because applying this broadly feels kind of risky.
How so?
Well, isn't it incredibly irresponsible to just ignore literal bad logistics? How does a leader, or how do you, the listener, know the difference between a genuinely terrible idea like driving over a bridge that is actually out and what the author calls internal hesitation?
That is a critical distinction, and the text draws a very firm line here.
Okay, good.
Moving at decision-making velocity does not mean moving with recklessness. The true return on investment for the author wasn't the photographs they took in London.
Right, the photos were just a byproduct.
Exactly. The real ROI was the sudden vanishing of their own internal friction. It was the immediate expansion of their capacity to lead and make decisions under pressure.
So the logistics themselves were never the actual problem to be solved.
No, the internal block was the problem. When you make a decision from a place of sovereign command, which means making a choice fully aligned with your ultimate long-term vision, the external logistics just bend to that absolute clarity.
You simply find another way.
Yes. Now, to your point about the broken bridge, if it were a genuinely dangerous or foolish situation, your clarity would dictate a hard, fast no.
Ah, I see.
The trap isn't making the wrong choice. The trap is the maybe. A fast no is still decision-making velocity.
Because it still closes the loop and frees up your mental browser.
Exactly. It's the limbo, the waiting for an app to tell you what to do that destroys your momentum.
That makes a ton of sense. The speed of the no is just as powerful as the speed of the yes.
Absolutely.
But shifting out of that limbo state, moving past that very real fear of making the wrong call, it has to be more than just a shift in mindset, right?
Oh, it is.
We touched on the biology earlier, and I want to dig into the actual mechanics of this. How does this work on a neurological level?
So the text provides a heavy dose of hard science here, moving way beyond typical self-help advice.
Which I love.
Yeah. The author dives into the relationship between the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for complex planning, risk assessment, and executive decision-making, and what they term sovereign space.
Okay.
And to anchor this, they pulled directly from the groundbreaking research of Dr. Antonio Damasio.
Right. Damasio is a total titan in neuroscience.
Yes, he is.
He's a researcher who fundamentally proved that human emotions aren't just subjective feelings that get in the way of logic.
And his work is completely paradigm shifting for business leaders. So Damasio studied patients who had suffered specific damage to the emotional centers of their brain, particularly the ventromedial prefrontal cortex.
Wow. Okay.
And what he found was astonishing. These patients had perfectly intact logic centers. They could score off the charts on IQ tests, they could analyze data, and they could list the pros and cons of any situation flawlessly.
But they couldn't actually make a choice.
No. They were entirely paralyzed when it came to making even the simplest decisions, like what to eat for lunch or when to schedule an appointment.
That's incredible. Why?
Because they lacked the ability to generate an emotional response, what Damasio calls somatic markers.
Somatic markers. Okay.
Yeah, they had no biological mechanism to weigh one option as fundamentally better or more desirable than another. The research literally proves that emotions are an absolute biological requirement for high-level decision-making.
So emotions are not just vibes you need to suppress in the boardroom.
No, they are critical data points your brain uses to navigate risk.
But that raises a practical issue for me.
Okay, what is it?
If someone is used to protecting their assets, right, like constantly playing it safe and waiting for perfect data, their nervous system is fundamentally operating on a different wavelength than someone who is out there taking massive proactive swings.
Yes, completely different.
How does the source differentiate between those two biological states?
Well, it comes down to what the nervous system is optimizing for. When you are operating in what the text calls the survival brain, your entire biological system is calibrated to safe.
Okay.
You are focused on healing, protecting what you have, and avoiding loss at all costs. Every single decision is filtered through a lens of potential threat.
And in a business context, this manifests as like overanalyzing a tiny expenditure. Right?
Exactly. Or delaying a product launch for months because it isn't flawless, or demanding endless consensus from your team before moving forward. You aren't trying to win the market, you are just trying to survive it.
You're playing not to lose, and your brain is actively looking for reasons to halt.
Contrast that with the proactive mindset, which is the biological foundation of sovereign space. In this state, you aren't reacting to threats, you are anticipating opportunities.
Right.
In a landscape like 2026, the only real competitive advantage is the ability to spot high-stakes opportunities before the market saturates.
And you absolutely cannot do that if your nervous system is stuck in a defensive crouch.
You really can't.
And this leads to one of the most fascinating concepts in the material, the business placebo.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
I think most of us understand the placebo effect in medicine, right?
Yeah.
You believe a sugar pill is a cure, and that sheer belief actually triggers real physiological healing responses in the body.
Right.
But applying that mechanism to business strategy is a wild leap.
It is a wild leap, but it is deeply grounded in cognitive psychology, specifically through a mechanism called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS.
Yeah. Think of your RAS as the ultimate executive assistant for your brain. At any given second, you are bombarded by millions of bits of sensory data.
Which is overwhelming.
If you processed all of it, you would go insane. So the RAS acts as a bouncer, filtering out the noise and only letting in the information that is strictly relevant to your survival or your current goal.
Oh, it's the classic buying a red car phenomenon.
Yes, exactly.
You buy a specific red car, and suddenly you see that exact same car on every single street corner. The cars were always there, but your brain is finally tagging them as important data.
That is the exact mechanism. Now apply that to the business placebo. If you exist in the survival brain, sitting in the maybe, your RAS is instructed to scan the horizon for threats, risks, and reasons why your business will fail.
And it will find them.
Oh, it will always find them. But when you make a fast, clear decision, when you step into sovereign command and genuinely believe that your choice will lead to a win, you give your RAS a new directive.
You reprogram the bouncer.
Exactly. Your brain subconsciously begins filtering your environment to find the evidence, the connections, and the obscure opportunities necessary to make your belief true. It starts highlighting the paths to success that your own doubt previously blinded you to.
Okay, understanding the neuroscience is incredible, And the concept of programming your own RAS is a fantastic tool. But I have to play devil's advocate again.
Go for it.
How do we translate this biological advantage into tangible boardroom-level results?
Right, the real-world application.
Yeah, because if you are a consultant or an agency owner, and you are sitting across from a legacy corporate board who only cares about quarterly spreadsheets and measurable KPIs,
It happens every day.
how do you convert this internal velocity into actual bankable value?
That is the ultimate crucible for this entire philosophy. It's one thing to feel sovereign, it's another to monetize it.
Exactly.
The source tackles this by outlining a fundamental transition in how you position yourself. You have to completely stop selling labor and start selling perspective.
Selling perspective over labor. I like the sound of that, but what does it actually look like in practice?
It relies on 3 specific pillars that dynamically shift the power in any room. The first pillar is context.
Okay.
You cannot just offer a menu of services. You have to demonstrate that you understand the exact nuanced world the client is operating in.
So, to go back to our earlier analogy,
Mm-hmm.
you aren't just telling them their engine is misfiring.
Right.
You are diagnosing the engine, analyzing the friction of the road they're driving on, predicting the weather patterns ahead,
Mm-hmm.
and telling them why their current destination is actually the wrong place to go.
Beautifully put, yes. You are providing a macro-level clarity that they lack because they are too close to their own problems.
Got it.
The second pillar is integrity. And in this context, integrity doesn't just mean being honest.
What does it mean here?
It means ensuring that your external yes perfectly matches your internal biology.
Oh, wow.
If you pitch a massive, complex project to a board, but internally you are terrified that you don't have the capacity to deliver it, the board will subconsciously detect that friction.
The frequency of not ready again.
Exactly. Your words are saying yes, but your micro behaviors are broadcasting a massive maybe. True integrity is when your internal confidence and your external pitch are in absolute lockstep.
Which naturally leads right into the third pillar, I'm assuming.
Yes.
If you have that deep context and your integrity is completely aligned,
Mm-hmm.
does that naturally shift how you are perceived in the room?
It completely alters your status. And the source defines status not as your job title, but as your ability to act as a peer rather than a subordinate.
Let's drill into that. Because if you're pitching a multinational client and technically you're asking them for money, how do you pull off acting as a peer without coming across as, well, incredibly arrogant?
It's never about arrogance. It's about unshakable authority.
Unshakable authority.
Yeah. When you move with decision-making velocity, you create what the text beautifully describes as a low-friction empire.
I love that phrase.
Right. When you aren't agonizing over every micro-decision or operating from a place of financial scarcity, your absolute clarity becomes your status. You become the rarest person in the boardroom, the person who is not desperate for the sale.
Because revenue simply becomes a byproduct of your clarity.
Exactly. Because you are no longer operating at the speed of your doubts. You aren't calculating what you have to say just to please them.
Let's look at a real-world scenario for this.
Sure. A subordinate walks into a room begging for a highly demanding, poorly aligned 5-figure contract because their survival brain says they need the cash flow.
Right.
A peer walks into that same room, recognizes the misalignment immediately, and exercises their sovereign command to deliver a fast, unapologetic no.
And they just walk away.
They walk away.
Yeah.
And they do that purely so they can preserve the energetic and calendar space required to say a massive yes to his 7-figure contract that perfectly aligns with their vision.
A subordinate absorbs friction to make a dollar. A peer eliminates friction because they know the sheer value of their own unclouded perspective.
That is exactly it.
This is where it gets real. We spent the last 15 minutes talking about decision-making velocity, but let's be honest, you can't move fast if your internal system is still carrying the weight of old patterns.
No, you really can't.
It's like trying to race a Ferrari with the handbrake on.
Mm.
If you felt that invisible ceiling today, you aren't alone, but you are responsible for shifting it.
Exactly. And that's the perfect transition into what Gina Pickersgill is doing over at the Virtual World Coaching Academy.
Right.
She isn't just talking about business strategy. She's helping entrepreneurs rewire the actual frequency of their wealth. If you're ready to stop the hesitation, you need to check the description right now.
Tell them what's in there.
So first, there's the Heal Your Money Wounds workshop. This is where you go to stop the leaks in your sovereign power.
Crucial step.
Second, for the coaches out there, you have to try her AI-driven Burden to Boundary Coach assessment. It's a surgical tool for identifying exactly where your energy is being drained so you can reclaim that sovereign space we talked about.
And before you click those links, do the sovereign thing here. If this perspective shifted something for you, hit the like button. It signals the algorithm that this is the frequency we're playing at.
Subscribe and hit that bell notification because in 2026, staying ahead isn't an option, it's the only way to play.
But wait, before we sign off entirely, to help you initiate that shift today, the Source actually offers a brilliant, immediate 48-hour challenge.
Oh yes, I love this practical application.
Think of one specific decision, just one, that you have been sitting on for more than 48 hours.
It could be a hire, a fire, a pivot, or an email you are just avoiding.
Look at that pending decision and ask yourself a very hard question. Am I actually waiting for more critical information, or am I just waiting for permission?
Oh, that is a heavy question because 90% of the time the data is already there.
Exactly. If you realize you are just waiting for permission, give it to yourself right now. Make the choice. Close the loop. Watch how fast the background processing power returns to you, and watch how quickly the energy in your business shifts.
It's instant momentum.
The consequence of ignoring this biology, of staying in the maybe, is simply watching the rest of the world move at the speed of light while you stay stuck at the speed of your own doubts. But I want to leave you with a different thought to mull over today. Forget the fear of falling behind for a second. Think about the expansion.
The good problems.
Right. If you actually master this, if you successfully close those mental tabs, eliminate the maybe, and start deciding at the speed of your absolute genius, what entirely new class of good problems will you suddenly have to face tomorrow? Who do you become, and what kind of rooms do you walk into when your own hesitation is no longer the bottleneck of your life?
Now go make a fast decision. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
So when Gina offered me the opportunity to do this, I jumped for it because I think anything that you can do that is going to chip away at these limiting the beliefs, the things that hold you back, is really, really worth doing. So it's been a really lovely experience, and if anybody's a bit worried about it, just do it, because the opportunity to connect through havening is really, really powerful. It's really, really powerful.
But really helpful, I think, in terms of having that kind of guided process just to kind of let the ideas and the feelings and the images flow, and then try and work out what it actually means afterwards, and to come up with, and it made intuitive sense. It's really, really helpful to then kind of have that debrief of, okay, what can we actually do with this stuff? Because that's where we tend to get stuck, is kind of like coming out of it going, oh, this is all some really interesting ideas and thoughts and feelings and images. But yeah, then, you know, how can we actually harness them to do something different? And I think that's been really, really helpful in terms of clarifying really what I need to prioritize to go forward in a way that will deal with some of that stuff that came up.
I would like to point out that I'm actually a therapist myself, and sometimes therapists also need a therapist. So I was really stuck, and then one day a friend posted a link for Gina's wealth and money attracting short course, and I went, this sounds great, I'm just gonna book it. And I loved it so much. I really had an epiphany on that course, and it was only meant to be a demonstration, and yet it was really it just opened up something, possibilities that I was stuck before, and now like, ooh, I can use this to unstuck myself. I'm a great believer that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and you appeared at the right time. That's all there is to it. So, you know, if anybody is watching this video, it means Gina has appeared in your life. So please give it a try.
She walks where the sky